everyone? Tyler DeLuca here, back with my top takeaway from this past week in women's basketball. And there's been some good games, but realistically, one game matters just about more than any game in women's college basketball, especially during the regular season, and that's UConn versus Tennessee. And this has been a rivalry that was a bit dormant in a way. Tennessee hadn't won since 2007. There was a long break when it came to just playing the game for a while there. And then last night, they get the win. They beat UConn at home. What a win for Kim Caldwell and Tennessee. And I want to kind of harp on the big picture a little bit here. Because Tennessee was, especially that second half, very, very good in this game. And deservedly so. There's a lot of good things to go around when talking about Tennessee. Whether it be Spearman's performance, whether it be the fact that Talaysia Cooper, who was sick coming into the game, didn't have her best game and you're still able to pull this off. But what it means for Tennessee as a whole is Kim Caldwell, and I had already been feeling this, but she feels like the hire that is going to be the one that gets Tennessee back to the top. And that doesn't even necessarily mean national championship, but it means being a genuine threat in the SEC. And obviously South Carolina is the standard bearer, and nobody is taking that throne anytime soon. But the idea that Tennessee can recruit in a way that many schools can't, the way that Kim Caldwell is a very unique system. It's a system that once we get deep into the depths of March and everything, I'm genuinely very excited to see the success and the failures that come with such a unique system, with the constant subbing, with the full court press. But right now, Tennessee hadn't been able to get over the hump and get that big win in a game. You saw what was close games that they should have won. You saw game winners against them. And to be at a 5-loss range at this point in the season, normally speaking, it's, if you're just box score watching or if you're just record watching, you're kind of tossing Tennessee to the side to a point. But those losses were against good teams and were tight. But when it came to the late game execution, Tennessee hadn't been able to get over that hump. And Kim Caldwell seemed frustrated in a lot of post-game press conferences, and rightfully so. It was talking about either they're not good enough or they don't care enough to learn from these mistakes, and finally they closed out a game. And that feels massive. And it feels massive for Tennessee and Kim Caldwell to beat UConn in year one is the statement win that they needed when it came to kind of telling recruits and telling people in the transfer that, hey, we're back. Tennessee is back. And for that, that's very, very exciting. And because women's college basketball is better when Tennessee is good. And so I'm very, very excited about that. And this is the statement win. This is it. It had to be if it was one of LSU, UConn, or South Carolina. And to me, LSU would be a very, very good win, but South Carolina is the standard bearer, and UConn has been the standard bearer for a long time, and obviously is the big rival. So to have it be one of those two feels even better than if it was beating LSU. But don't get me wrong, LSU would be a fantastic win as well. Got close to the first time. We'll see them run it back on Sunday, I believe. But for UConn, right, your best resume wins now are North Carolina and Ole Miss. You lose to Notre Dame, you lose to USC, you now lose to Tennessee, and South Carolina is on deck, and there's no ranked teams in the Big East to really kind of build up your resume for. For me, yes, they're ranked number 5 in the nation right now, but genuinely, I will be very intrigued to figure out where they're seated. That was ranked number 5 before the loss. I'm very, very intrigued to see where they're going to be seated, because to me, that resume, the talent on the roster is obviously a top 16 roster, but the wins haven't been there in that way. So I'll be very, very excited to see where UConn ends up being seated, assuming under the assumption that they don't beat South Carolina, because obviously that changes things. But if they don't go to CLA and beat South Carolina, which is a task that nobody has been able to do for years now. Even if they run through the Big East, I don't know where they're going to end up being seeded. I would expect them to still be a top 16 seed, whether it just be based on talent or whatever. But it's definitely becoming a concern now that they haven't been able to get the offense revving in a way where they can comfortably win these games against big teams. Whether, like Sarah Strong is phenomenal, right? But the second half, she slowed down. Paige Beckers, I thought she played a very, very good game, but it's still the switch flipping. And then you even have someone like the timeout stuff with Gino. Like, it's very odd to see a UConn team that hasn't been able to finish these big games. And it's absolutely becoming a very, very real worry at this point. So, for UConn, you kind of have one more test. Even if it's an eye test and, like, you keep it close against South Carolina, I think that goes a long way. But if they go and get blown out by South Carolina, I don't know where they're going to end up being seeded. Because this Tennessee game was massive for them to find another top-tier ranked win. And again, Tennessee ranked number 19 going into this game. I think they're a better team than that, but you have to win the games, and they haven't. So the ranking I felt was fair, but I felt like the talent that they have on the court, especially in what they're doing in year one under Kim Caldwell in a completely new system, has been very impressive. I'm not surprised that Tennessee won this game. I expected UConn to win, but I wasn't surprised to see Tennessee win. And Tennessee gets their big, big resume building win, both for this year and for the future when it comes to recruiting and things of that nature. But for UConn, there's a lot of questions to ask. And again, this was kind of you have South Carolina, but this was the one that had been circled since non-conference. It was like, okay, if you beat Tennessee, you're feeling good to get that that top 16 seeding to host and whatnot. Again, I don't think that they're not going to host, but the question is there to be asked, which is not normal for a UConn, especially a UConn team that has been, especially recently and in this game, relatively healthy. Obviously, that's been a massive, a massive talking point. But to a point, they've been healthy, and they were in this game, and it wasn't enough. So for UConn, there's question marks. And I'm very, very interested to see how that South Carolina game goes, to see how they react to that. Because they just don't have that big signature win. Good wins, for sure. Good wins. Not a signature win. And not a win that screams, I am a solidified top 16 hosting team right now. The talent is there. The resume is not. That's going to do it for me, though, on this week. For my big takeaway in women's basketball, again, this rivalry being back is fantastic. And it is so, so incredibly good. Because for me, look, this is new. I'm used to UConn Notre Dame. Tennessee UConn hasn't really been a real, back and forth rivalry in my time watching women's basketball. So I'm very excited that this is hopefully the start of this rivalry being reinvigorated. And because it's basketball is just better when Tennessee and UConn are beefing. It's that simple. That'll do it for me. I'll see you next time.